Hi and welcome back to Apocrypha, the adventure card game. In our last video we had completed our mission in cold blood and we had just chosen some fragments. I think they were fleeting fragments at the end of the mission, which were kind of character upgrades in this game. So in this video, before I start the next mission, what I wanted to do was just come back and talk about how character progression works in this game. Because though you can play each mission completely separately, standalone, you can also have continuing developing characters from mission to mission. So I thought we could chat for a minute about how that works, or at least how I understand that works. Okay, so let's move the box. So here are my characters as they were at the end of last mission. So through the course of the mission, when we were exploring the nexuses, sometimes we'd come up against gifts. Now gifts were anything we'd find in the nexus that wasn't an omen, or wasn't a threat, or wasn't a true threat, a minion. Essentially, it's all of these cards that could be in our decks, all of these useful items and just anything that can help us to do our mission. So when I first played the game, my first mission, all of my cards had this symbol in the top right. Now these are alpha cards. That means they are beginner cards, starting deck cards. But through the course of playing missions, you'll also find gift cards that don't have that alpha card symbol. So that represents that these are not just starter cards. There's also enhanced versions of cards, which I don't think I've seen yet. Maybe they're not in the core set, maybe they come in later sets, like the Skinwalkers, I'm not sure. So essentially, at the end of a mission, I will have sacrificed some cards, buried some cards, gained some new cards into my hand from the nexuses. And in between missions, what you can do is you can take your deck as it stands at the very end of the game and you can edit it. You can go through it and choose cards to keep, choose cards to get rid of, and that's how you progress in the game. That's how your deck changes and you get better skills, better items as well. So what we're going to look at now is what the rules are for how we have to build our deck. So if we move up to, this is the character divider, the divider card that goes in the box. So here, at the bottom here, it lists the exact cards that Frank Block has in the first mission of the game. In your deck, you'll have 3 mind cards, 3 body cards, etc. And then, in addition to that, you'll draw 4 random omens. And that makes up your entire deck. Now, if we look down here, we can see that the cards I have in my deck do not match up exactly with what's listed here. So what's happened is I've gained more cards through the course of doing missions. Now, between missions, what I have to do is look through these cards and make sure that I have the correct number of each virtue's cards. For instance, if we look here at Rage, I have to have 1, 2, 3, 4 Rage cards. So I currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have to get rid of one. Or the other option is I can trade one with another saint I'm playing with, so I could pass one of these over to Z's if he's got space for it. I said the number being here. The easier way to know is on your saint card that you use game to game, you will always have, if you're playing Frank, you will always have 4 rage cards, 3 mind cards, 3 body cards, and 1 soul card. So what I'm going to do in a minute is look through all of the cards that I ended last game with and decide which ones I want to keep in order to make it so he has the correct amount of cards in his deck. Then, if I move over, I'll come to Dr. Z's deck, and I'll do the same. I'll make sure he has 4 mind cards, 2 body cards, 2 rage cards, and 3 soul cards. But of course, some of his cards are alpha, beginner cards, as shown in the top right. But some of them, for instance this Tail Gunner, that's a card I've gained through playing missions. So I'll be having a look through both Frank's and Z's cards, and I'll be trading them between them and getting their decks legal for the next game. I suppose the other thing to talk about as far as character progression is the fragments. So if we move up here to the card sleeves, you get this. And now, in these card sleeves, in the very centre, you put your character card. Then around you, you have 8 slots in which you can slot fragments. Now, the rulebook talks about both fleeting fragments and enduring fragments. I haven't seen any enduring fragments yet, so I think they must come in later chapters as well. Fleeting fragments seem to be one-time use special powers that you can use. Everyone I've seen so far has the word sacrifice in it, meaning you sacrifice it to the sacrifice pile during the game and then you probably won't be getting it back. I haven't seen anything yet that takes things back out from the sacrifice pile. So the other thing you can do is, in between missions, you can move these fragments within your own halo, which is the halo is what they call the 8 slots around your character. Now the slots represent what direction you can use the powers in. So for instance, a card slotted to the right means it can affect anyone physically at the table sitting to your right. Left, people to your left. Above would be people at your nexus. Below would be yourself only. The difference in my game is that because I'm playing 2 players, you're always considered to be both to the left and the right to the other player. So I could use either of these cards to affect Z's, and Z's could do the same to Frank. I think that's all I need to say. Oh, one more thing would be, during the game, if you ever fade, if you lose all your cards from your deck, you can't draw any more, and you begin to fade, then you would take what's called a death card. At the end of the scenario, if you're left with that death card, then if you've won, then rather than taking a fragment, you can get rid of that fragment, send it back to the box, and that will stop you from having to slot a death in your halo. The risk here is that if you don't win the scenario, then you will have to slot the death. And even if you lose the scenario but no one's faded, one character will still have to slot a death. I think 1 or 2 or even 3 deaths probably wouldn't be too bad, but if you ever completely fill your halo with deaths, that character is permanently killed. Okay, I think that is actually everything I need to say about that now, so I think what I'm going to do is go away off camera and go through all my cards, get everything how I want it, and then I'll come back and show you my finished decks ready for the next scenario. We are ready to construct our deck for the next mission. I've taken both Frank's and Z's decks and I've set them out next to their character cards, so that here's all Frank's cards and over there are all Z's. And I've decided which cards I'm going to keep, which cards I'm going to lose, and which cards I'm going to trade. One thing that we didn't talk about before was what you do if you come to this stage of constructing your deck and find you don't have enough of a certain gift. For instance, looking at our character cards, we ought to have 1 soul card for Frank and 3 for Z's. So what if we got to this stage and we found that we only had 3 soul cards, 3 soul gifts total? Well, what we would do, we would trade those 3 amongst both characters however we wished, It could end with Z's having all 3, it could end with Z's having 2 and Frank having 1. And then whichever character was left short a card, we would then turn to the game box, and inside the game box would be a deck for each type of cards. So you've got your divider there. This is all my soul gifts. I've just taken it out of the box. And here's my deck of all my soul gifts. What we would do in that instance is we would shuffle this up, and after shuffling it, we would just go through it until we found our first random alpha, that symbol in the right, soul gift. And then that's the card that that character would get. So, yeah. If you don't have enough of a certain virtue's gifts, you draw a random alpha gift. That wasn't the case when I was doing this. I just thought I ought to explain it before moving on for future reference. So, the decisions I've made for our decks are this. I'll go down each virtue one at a time. So we'll start with Rage. So we need to have 4 for Frank and 2 for Z's. So I've decided to do this. For Frank, I've decided to take the Relic Blade and the Dead Sea Salt, and those 2 cards are going to be traded to Z's. I'll start a deck each down here. So this is Z's final deck. Okay, and I've decided from Z's to take the pearl-handled revolver and trade that to Frank. And I actually had one too many cards of Rage gifts. I needed 2, 6, and I had 7. So this card, the Tail Gunner, I've decided to get rid of this. I don't want it anymore. So I'm just going to discard it off to the side. So now Frank is left with 4 Rage cards, which is what he has to have. So I'll take those and start constructing Frank's deck. Down here. Now we'll move on. Moving down to the Mind Gifts. I need to have 4 for Z's and 3 for Frank. Zank. So I've decided to, I think I decided with this just to leave it exactly as it is. I was happy with what we had. Yeah, I think Frank's were all good. And specifically, I left it how it was because Z's here has a number of gifts with the keyword wicked. And something that I've suddenly realised, I'm not sure if I know I haven't been doing this in my games, but I'm not sure whether it's had a massive effect or not. I've been completely ignoring this power, which is whenever Z's plays a wicked or a healing gift, lower its cost by 1. Now its cost is the reason that I've got this card out. This is the order of costs within the game. So every time that Z's has played a wicked or healing card, if it says to discard it, in fact you recycle it. If it says to sacrifice it, instead you only bury it. You move down 1 in the order. So actually that makes so that Z's works very well with any healing or any wicked gifts. So through the course of deciding which cards I'm going to give him, I've tried to give him as many wicked and as many healing gifts as possible. Okay, so that ended with us choosing to keep all of these gifts with Z's, seeing as they are all of them either wicked or healing. So hopefully he can put them to good use. Okay, moving down again to our body gifts. What I decided to do here was quite simple. I'm just trading 1 card. I need to end up with 3 for Frank, 2 for Z's. So over here, here's Frank's 3. I've just decided to take the extra shot and give that to Z's. And from Z's, I'm taking the picks and giving them to Frank. Now I've tried to do this based on keywords again. So there's a strike here, which links up with Frank's strike 2. He's also got Sense, which links up with the Vice Dogs. So here's his 3. This is what I've been trying to do. I think I found, after my first 3 games, I'm starting to get the hang of how you're meant to build decks in this game. That always looking out for these keywords at the bottom. For instance, with Z's, looking out for Healing and Wicked. Looking out for giving Frank the really good Rage cards because he works well with them. I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. So for body, for Z's 2 body cards, I've given him 2 extra shots. Because they both are surge gifts, and we'll get to why that matters in a minute when we get down to Soul. So yeah, and 2 more healing gifts as well, which obviously works well with Z's. And then our final ones is our Soul gifts. Below, these ones below are just the decks that I've been making. So Soul gifts, I've decided to do a trade, which needs to end up with Frank having 1, Z's having 3. So I'm going to take Frank's 1 soul card that he had from last game, the Dream Snare, trade that to Z's. And from Z's cards, I'm bringing over the Seer. Now, Frank is going to have the Seer because it has the keyword Sense, which matches up with Frank. So there's Frank's deck. And over here for Z's, he's got this card. I think I just gave it because it's a good card. Just a good card again, I think. Hack, which links up to his keywords. And now here's the key one. And the major reason for a lot of the choices I've made. This Charm Bracelet is a resist card which matches one of his keywords. But really, it has heal 3 surge gifts. Now if you remember back, multiple of the cards that I have put into Z's deck are surge cards. So I thought that would make a good combo with this one. So hopefully, because I've found out of both characters, Z's has the most trouble running out of cards. He has, because he has a hand size of 6, and a lot of his cards discard and sacrifice, he runs out of cards a lot faster than Frank does. That might change now that I've remembered this rule, the Wicked or Healing Gift lowering the cost. That might make it a bit easier, but in case it doesn't, I've decided to give him quite a lot of those surge gifts so that I can then heal them, and a lot of different healing cards. So here we have our decks, all completed with the right number of cards for each virtue. Now before starting the next mission, what I would do is I would go to the box, I would find my deck of Omen cards, and as is listed here, the 4 and the 4, I would get 4 random Omens into each deck. Now the deck is completely random. It could be, I could end up with 4 Omens of Doom, 4 Omens of Hope, or any combination. So that's another random element to the game. So what I'll do is, in a minute, I will get those 4 Omens, shuffle them in randomly, face down obviously so I don't know what I'm getting, shuffle the deck up one more time, and then I'll be ready to set up and play the next mission. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.